Yoo-hoo, it's Luhu. I'm Cindy Young, and I'm the designer behind Luhu Stitches, and I'm here for another, maybe it's a Flosstube in 15, and maybe it's a Flosstube in 16, maybe it's a Flosstube in 20, or maybe it's less. I don't know. I'm going to do a little how-to video for you today, which is why I'm standing in my kitchen, because I'm going to tilt the camera down, actually my phone, and I'm going to show you how I chart certain stitches and then how I do those stitches and what they ought to look like. I had a friend of mine ask me, actually my son-in-law's mom asked me, do you have a video on how to do French knots and backstitching? And I said, no, I don't, but gee, that's a really good idea. Why don't I make one? So that's what I'm doing today. And I thought it might be a good idea if I also showed you how I personally chart them. So if you're looking at one of my designs, you'll know kind of how I chart it and what I'm thinking about the end product looking like. Okay, so I have two different needles here. Of course, I dropped one and the garbage is being picked up all at the same time. Okay, so I have two big needles here with yarn on them, and I'm going to do this on a big piece of burlap, actually, and it'll be an overhead deal. And but first, I'm going to show you how I chart everything. So, okay, no, not right like that. Okay, hopefully nothing falls off. Here we go. All right, let's see. There we are. You can see that, right? I hope. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to use one of these threads to point with, one of these needles to point with. This is how I chart a French knot, like that. On my program, on the WinStitch program, which is also Backstitch, it just depends on whether you have an Apple product or a PC product. They don't have necessarily a French knot. What they have is a kind of a specialty stitch, and they just says specialty stitch, and they have beads. So I actually use the bead symbol to chart my French knots, which also means if you don't want to do a French knot, if you're like, I don't like French knots, go ahead and get a bead and you can do it. I always chart the bead in the color it should be stitched in, not the bead, the French knot, in the color it should be stitched in. And I will make notes on a pattern that tell you French knots around the flower should be in DMC 636 or whatever. And so that you know, like, oh, okay, that's what thread that is, because it won't have a symbol attached to it like you do for your regular cross stitches. Okay, right here, I hope you can see this. This is backstitching. I want you to view each one of these squares as one square on your chart. And this would be, as you can see, this would be stitching across one square, stitching along maybe the bottom edge of a couple squares. Right here, you'll see that there's two squares across, but only one square up. So you're not going to try and find a middle spot here. You're going to stitch from the bottom of this square all the way to the top of this square. Okay, and then back down and over and up and around a square. And we'll go over that in a minute. Okay, down here we have a couple of different ways fractional stitches can be represented on a chart. And I'm going to talk about the way I deal with fractional stitches. So I've got two different symbols here. That'll be your first clue. These are fractional stitches. What I do on a fractional stitch is I will include a backstitch line in the color or in the color of the symbol that I would want to, that I'm seeing it in my mind, and as I'm also stitching a pattern. So for instance, this is a heart and it's pink. This is a circle and it's orange. this would be a 3/4 stitch. In other words, you'd come up down here and you'd stop in the middle. So you need to view this right here as one square on your chart, okay? So there's the heart right here, and then I would go ahead and do a long stitch this way in order to complete 3/4 of the stitch. This would be just a 1/4 stitch. So you would just go 1/2 of a stitch from right here to here, and that's all it would be. And I'll show you what that looks like here on our example right here. This right here is actually over 1. So each one of these, if you're stitching on linen, you've got threads going this way and threads going this way, okay? But this is only over 1 crosshatch of stitching, and I'll show you what I mean by that in a minute as well. Okay, well, let's get started with what the stitching looks like. So I've got a piece of red yarn here that I'm going to start with, and I'm actually going to put a knot in the back just because I don't want to pull it through. I don't normally knot, and I'm not, this is not, I'm not showing you like how to do a pin stitch or anything. Frankly, I don't know how to do a pin stitch, but it's something I want to learn. We're going to start with the French knot, and I'm going to do a couple French knots. So I've looked at my chart and I'm coming up. I hope you can see this. I'm coming up right here, and I'm going to bring my thread all the way up to where my knot stops it. Now this is the tricky part. People are like, well, where do I go? How many times do I wrap around? Where do I go in? Depending on how big you want your knot to be, you may wrap around more than once. I typically only wrap around once. So you're going to take your needle and you're going to wrap around it one time like that. Hold on to your thread, and let me tell you, this is a whole lot easier to do in a large scale than it is on a normal. And then take and position your needle not where you came up, but right next to where you came up. You may want to go this way or this way or this way. I'm hoping you can see these holes. There's 3 other holes here I can go around. I'm going to go to the one diagonally across from the one that I came up in. I'm basically stitching over 1, and I'm going to go down and I'm going to hold my thread. I'm not going to let go of my thread until I've pulled my whole length through. And I'm gonna kind of hold it toward the end until I have my knot. Now that's not very big, but it's kind of a nice knot. Okay, let's do it where I'm gonna wrap around twice. That will give me a bigger knot, French knot. So I'm gonna come up. I'm actually gonna wrap around twice, and I'm gonna go down, and I'm gonna hold on to it all the way. And then I'm gonna kind of hold the knot, and you can kind of see what happens. You've wrapped around it and created a knot. This one's gonna be a lot more elevated even when you're using larger, smaller threads and smaller needles. Now I should mention, I'm doing this on burlap because I figure it's nice and big. And at some point here, I'm going to show you how you would work over 2 threads, okay? All right, let me do a French knot one more time, because you're probably sitting there going, okay, can you do that one more time? Or you can always, rewind and try again. All right. So wrap around. I'm going to wrap around twice just because I like the bigger knot. I'm going to come down next to the spot where I came up just so you can see what the difference is. It actually sort of changes the direction of, whoops, and then there's that. Okay, hold on. Okay, this is probably where you're like, yeah, see, Cindy, that's what happens to me. So I'm going to come back up and see what happened. Let me see what happened here. I'm not sure what happened, but now I have a tangled mess. Okay. See, even when you do it lots and lots of times. I do not dislike doing French knots, even though this kind of thing can happen. So I'm not really sure what happened. It could have been that my tail got kind of tangled up and pulled it through. Okay, twice around, whoops. I'm gonna go down next to the hole I came up in rather than diagonally across from it. And I'm gonna hold this and I'm gonna pull gently. If I can grab my needle, there we go. I'm not really sure why it's pulling through. It could be actually because this hole was too big. So that would be one argument in favor of, there we go, there it is. So something happened here and I'm not really sure. It could not have, it might not have been tight enough on the back. All right, so that's what happens when it messes up. Let me see if I can. So what would you do? Like, oh my gosh, I've got this whole string of French knots. Okay, so you've got basically a stitch. There's a knot on the back. What am I gonna do, you say to yourself? Come back up where you wanna come back up. Just like that. Okay, and just do it again. Just go right back over where you messed up, and then you can go on with your line of French knots. See, and this time it's working better. There, okay. And there's my French knot. So see, you can cover up mistakes. And I totally forgot to bring my scissors over here, so I'm gonna just run over here and grab my scissors. All right, so I'm gonna cut this off because I'm gonna need this. Actually, I'm gonna leave it in for right now. So let me show you the back stitching. All right, so I'm gonna come up here. Now, I'm hoping you can see this, but I've got threads running this way and threads running this way. I'm going to stitch over 2. Over 2 means just like this. I'm gonna go not right here, but here's 2 threads. I'm going up in the corner. So I'm seeing a square right here, okay? And I'm gonna come down. I'll make a cross stitch for you. And I'm doing this kind of upside down to, I mean, it's upside down. It's right side up to me, but it's upside down to you. So I'm gonna, here, I'll do it right here. All right, and then I'm gonna come up here and go back down directly across from that, but 2 threads over. And voila, I have a cross stitch, okay? All right, so now to do the back stitch, I'm gonna go according to what I drew out here, and I'll show you that again. So I'm gonna come up, say this is my spot where I'm supposed to be. I'm gonna come up here, and I'm gonna go down, this is 1 stitch, back stitch right here. All right, now I want to do my next back stitch. I can't come up here. I need to come over 1 stitch or 2 threads right there and come up. But then in order to create the back stitching for right here, I'm gonna go down right here. And that's kind of why they call it back stitching, because you're gonna go back. All right. For the next one, I'm gonna actually come up here. So you're gonna come up, not where you go down, if that makes sense. All right, so there, I created my next stitch. Okay, and it's right next to each other. Now, I come up on that piece. I'm hoping you can see my needle. I'm coming up on the section where I went over 2 and up 1. So the way I count when I'm counting on a linen or an even weave is I count my threads. 1 and 2, or actually 1 and 2. I don't know, I hope you saw how I did that. So I'm coming up here because I only want to go up 1 and I need to go over 2. So 1 and 2. I kind of don't count my 1 until I get to my proper spot. 1 and 2. Okay, since I went down over here, I've got to go down there again. I couldn't come up here, but now I'm going to go down. And I have that longer stitch, okay? Hoping you see all of this. All right, now I can come back up here where I came up before, and I'm going to go down 1 diagonally right here. I'm going to go over 1, but I'm going to come up away from where I went down. So you can never come up where you went down. I hope that makes sense. Like so, and like so. And then our last stitch in my little back stitch dealy bob right here. Okay, so that is the back stitch that I charted out here. Down over 2, up 2, up 1 over 2, down 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. Okay, and that's what I've done here. Alrighty. Okay, so your French knots, your back stitch. Now I'm going to show you, so I don't have to change threads until the very end here. I'm going to show you what over 1 looks like. So this was an over 2 stitch right here. So I'm going to come down here. Can you see? I hope you can see. You're either yelling at me like, no, I can't see. Okay, I'm going to come up right here. And I am going to just go over 1. So before I was going over 2 threads this way and 2 threads this way and creating my square. This time I'm just going over one square basically. Think of this as a little tiny square and I'm going over it this way. So I do that and then I come up right where next to where I came up before, and I'm going to go down here. I'm going to go down right here, so it's still over 1, and I create a little tiny X. So I know of people who cross stitch on 40 count over 1. I have a hard time cross stitching on this big over 1, and I'm not sure what the count on this would be. All right, so now I have another over 1 right next to this. Well, I can't remember, just like on backstitch, you can never come up where you went down. I'm going to come up over here, and I'm going to come down right here. And then I should have trimmed the edges a little more. I'm going to come up right here and down right here. So now I have 2 over 1s right next to one another. And there you go. Okay, now I'm going to pull out my other color here, because I'm going to show you how 3/4 and 1/4 stitches go. So here's my other color, which, oh my gosh, now I didn't even do anything with this and it's all knotted up. What the heck? Live, this is kind of like live, you know, because I don't edit. All right, still a mess. Why? You know why? I'm doing a video, that's why. Oh my gosh, what a mess. Okay, there we go. Well, I thought there we go. There. Oh my word, this is like the biggest mess. I can't even believe it. Why is it like, how did it get like this? I don't think there were cats or dogs involved. All right. All right, so that's how you get a knot out, in case you're wondering. All right, so now I want to show you what's going on here. So my red will be the heart in this line, and my orange will be this variegated color right here. All right, so I'm going to come up in what would be what I think of as my square that I'm working on. Okay, and I'm going to go down. I'm actually going to just go over one, just like that. And I've created 1/4 of the stitch. Okay, now I'm going to create the other quarter for the stitch that would run this way. And I'm going to come up with my red thread right here, and I'll go down. This would be the center of the square. I'm going to go down right here. Hopefully nothing crazy is happening on the back here. Whoops. And there I've got the other quarter. To make it a 3/4, I need to do the other leg of my X, and so I'll come up in the other corner and come down right here, just like I was making a regular single thread cross stitch. And there you have it. So you have a 3/4 stitch right here, a 1/4 right here. And when I chart, I will draw a line the same color as the thread that I envision it being 3/4 of, okay? So there you have it. You have over one stitching right next to each other. You have fractional stitching right here. You have a regular cross stitch. You have back stitching right here. And you have your French knots. Let me do one more 1/4 stitch for you, just for fun. Okay, let's pretend that we're going this way. We're going to create some sort of line this way for a flower or something. So I'm coming up. This is my square that I'm looking at right here. I'm going to go down in the center of my square for my 1/4 stitch. And then come up for the other half of, or the other 1/4 of stitch, not half. Okay, and I'm going to go back down in the center. And now I'm going to create my other leg right here. Like so. Okay, you can almost envision it. If I were to make this a full square right here, whoops, I did that wrong. It's because I'm doing this upside down. I'm trying to think about it in terms of how you would see it. Okay, there we go. Okay, so this would be my first leg of a full cross stitch, and the second leg of a full cross stitch. And hopefully this is fairly visible and you're seeing all of this. All right, and then, okay, let's pretend. Oh, that's weird. Okay. All right. first, oh, I did that wrong again. Sorry about that. That would have been weird. All right, come up here. I'm doing this mainly so you can get an idea of why someone might do fractional stitches. Okay, I'm almost out of orange on this little thing. And there you go. So you can see what's going on. So this might be a flower or part of a bigger thing or whatever. So there you have it. So let me show you the charting, what that looks like again. So up here, little dot, French knot, backstitching looks something like this and follows the contour of, may follow the contour of your main stitching. This is what on a Luhu stitches chart, this is what fractional stitches will look like. And these are over 1. Okay, so let me see where we're at. Yeah, we're at 26 minutes. I really didn't think it would take me that long, but hopefully this downloads. Last time I tried to download a longer video, it didn't work out so well. So hopefully this downloads and you're seeing this. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope it made sense to you. I would love to hear your comments. Subscribe, hit the bell so you know when I upload a new video. And what else? That's all I can think of. Thank you. Comments, thumbs up, subscribe, hit the bell. And don't forget to go and buy a Showers of Blessing chart. Remember that all the proceeds from that particular chart go toward the Red Cross Western Wildfire Fund to help Red Cross as they help others who've been affected by wildfire in the West this year. That's it. Be a raindrop. Anyway, thanks everybody for stopping by and happy stitching.